probably what's happening is the same thing that always happens, which is even though I've been using Zoom on a daily basis for the past 5 years, I still forget how to use it when the time comes. Hi, everybody. It's so nice to see you all. Welcome. Thank you for coming. I'm Brooke Monahan, for those of you who don't know me, who came from Tristan's corner of the internet. We're happy to have you here. I'm Brooke Monahan. I use she and her pronouns. I am the founder of Fruition Growth Network, which is the space that you have found yourself in. And because this is the first workshop like this that we are doing, I thought I would take a minute and tell you a bit about where you found yourself. So a little bit about me, if you don't know me already. I have kind of been fascinated with people who work for themselves forever. It's like this weird obsession that I just can't get rid of, that led me into a few different iterations of my work. I've worked for myself since 2019. I established a consulting business then, and then ended up in business and leadership coaching for the past 4 years or so, and witnessed over that time the way that things have changed and the issues that people are facing, and the like uphill battle that honestly I think online business owners especially are against right now, trying to grow your work in a digital landscape. And I kind of got like fed up with participating in some of the things that I was participating in, and decided in the beginning of the summer to just say, you know what, we're going to go in a different direction and start this project. And really what I'm looking to do is create a space that addresses a few key issues. The first being that I think we're in a situation right now where it's hard to find people who are offering quality work. People who are great at marketing are the ones who are being seen, and people who are doing great work are not necessarily the people who are being seen. And I'm sure that some of you here have also had
your
delight of ending up in a space where you're like, this person seems like they know what they're doing. And then it's like, oh no, they're actually great at marketing. I luckily have met a lot of people who are really great at what they're doing. And I would love for as many people as possible to see what they're up to. So that's the first thing. The other thing is the financial inaccessibility of coaching and a lot of the programming that's out there. There's a lot of amazing programming out there that it just, in my view, does not make sense. How expensive it is, given what many of us are experiencing. And the fact that a lot of the platforms that are available for folks to be seen are pretty exclusionary. And you have to be pretty established before anyone wants you on their platform, and you have to bring a big audience yourself. And I don't like it. So I decided to start something new. So we have big plans for Fruition. I'm not going to bore you with all of that, but I will say that right now, my main focus is we have about 30 contributors, founding contributors, Tristan being one of them, leading this very first workshop, who are going to be making contributions to this space in the form of programming like this. And I want as many people to be here as possible, because our future goal is to have things like sponsorships and make some money off of people with money instead of those of us who are struggling to make money. So we're trying to get as many people in the room as possible. And to connect you all. Like, I know so many brilliant people. You all know so many brilliant people. I really believe that if we came together and knew more about what we were doing, that alone would make a huge difference. I don't really think that the answer to us growing our businesses lies in the secrets of one guru. I think it's more about like us collectively coming together and learning more about each other's work and connecting each other, and helping each other out. So that's what we're doing. So you can learn more about all of our future plans for this space at joinfruition.com. It's going to take me a while. I'm the only one doing it. So thank you for your patience, because everything is moving slower than I wanted it to. And for everybody who found some technical glitch and told me about it with love, thank you. I'm figuring it out, and I appreciate you so much. So for now, we have some plans for paid tiers of Fruition Growth Network, but I'm keeping things, at least these kinds of workshops, free for as long as I can. They're going to remain free for a little while, which was not the plan. So if you want to support us, because all of our effort is going into marketing things that don't make us money, And unfortunately, we need it to keep going. A few things that you can do. Register for upcoming events. We have a co-working happening on Friday, which is free. You can implement some of what you learned from Tristan today in the co-working. How about that? On December 12th, we have another contributor workshop from Steph Galante, who is going to be walking us through an audit of basic self-care practices and building them into your schedule, because our obsession on productivity to keep going when the world is a dumpster fire, I don't believe is the answer. I think it's actually to take care of yourself so that you can keep going. So go to the community, go back into the community events tab and register for events. Tell your friends. We have a podcast. It's called Make Your Business Work for You. Check it out. That helps us out a lot. And if you want to check out other spaces that we have available where we have group coaching and that kind of thing, you can check that all out at joinfruition.com and join us before I launch anything if you would like to join. I don't have the capacity to do it all at once. I wish that I did, but hey, apparently I'm human. Okay. So with that, yeah, ask questions in the community. Ask questions. We have a section where you can ask questions to our 30+ expert contributors, and we will record responses to your questions on the podcast. And you can ask long, rambly, not concise questions, and we will like tease them out and provide context and nuance and put it on the podcast for you. I think that that's it. So I'm going to mute myself and pass things over to my dear friend Tristan. And yeah, Tristan, take it away, my friend.
Thank you. Can you all hear me okay? I switched microphones in the middle of Brooke's welcoming monologue, speech, intro, etc. Thank you, Brooke. Thank you for creating a space like this that will be evolving. Don't apologize for being a one-person show and doing it as best as you can, given that the world is a mess right now in particular. We're grateful. I'm grateful to be here on the platform, in the space, and with you all. So thank you for coming. I want to acknowledge before I share my screen and do the whole like introduce myself thing that we might be coming in with different stuff. There's a lot going on in the world that's like really, really, I mean, I don't have words. And it's impacting all of us in different ways, I imagine. And for me personally, to come into a room of people I maybe am more familiar with or less familiar with, a combination of the two, and I don't know what people are carrying, but I feel like we're carrying stuff. And so I just want to name it and acknowledge it. Particularly in talking about marketing, it just feels, and those of you who know me in my work, I can't talk about marketing without talking about what's happening in the world, and particularly talking about privilege and power and oppression. And lately, I just feel like, how can we not bring a DEI lens to everything? I don't want to get too rambly on this, but right now I'm like, why do we call it a DEI lens though? Isn't it just real? And if we're just calling it a DEI lens, are we somehow dismissing and undermining the reality of the world, which is some people have access to resources and some people don't? And this is causing, okay, I'm gonna stop. I've got stuff going on in my body. So that's maybe what I need to just name and acknowledge. And that's what's coming up. Okay, I'm going to share my screen. If that was something that maybe prompts you to take a deep breath or feel your feet, or just notice that you're alive and breathing in this moment, and maybe, I don't know, have a sip of water or take care of your body in some way, I just want to invite you to do that. I'm going to share my screen and do the whole introduction thing, and we'll get started. I want to say that I've never taught anything like this before. This is a brand new, in some ways, aspect of my work that I'm sharing publicly. Like, I've taught about creating meaningful, effective content and content marketing for years, but this summer I went through another layer of transition, and my work transitioned with me. And as a dear friend, Brooke was able to help guide me through like a really like confusing moment in my work. And I am now focusing on something that I hope will be helpful. But this is my first time bringing it into space. So I just want to say that. The title of today is Create Meaningful, Effective Content. I'm going to tell you a little bit about what this session is going to look like, and then I'll introduce myself more properly for those who are new to me. But we're going to talk about effective content marketing, and particularly why I focus on content marketing, but not all content marketing is effective. So we're going to break that down. We're going to talk about repurposing with purpose. By now, if you're an entrepreneur or in the marketing space in any way, shape, or form, you've likely heard about like the secret is in the repurposing. But again, I think that that can be done strategically. And I think that it can be done in ways that are much more about, for lack of a better word, quantity over quality. So we're going to be talking a lot about how to make an impact with our repurposing. We're also going to have some space for what I call a content creation practice. So I'm going to give y'all maybe 10 to 15 minutes at some point after I like put a foundation to this conversation, 10 to 15 minutes to reflect and maybe do some journaling, some note taking, some mapping, whatever might be helpful. And then we'll come back together, share if anybody feels inclined to share, ask questions, do some spot coaching if that feels helpful, supportive, whatever. And then I'll offer some additional resources and further learning. For those who don't know me, hi. My name is Tristan Katz. My pronouns are they and he. Right now, that means mostly they and sometimes he. You can think of it like a rainbow or chocolate sprinkle of he on an otherwise unsprinkled ice cream cone. I hope that joke did not land inappropriately with anyone in the space. I'm just acknowledging that sometimes I make jokes about pronouns that maybe aren't cool for everybody to hear, and that's where I'm at. So if that felt off for anyone, I want to acknowledge that. And I own that. I do marketing strategies for justice-focused leaders. That is new language, again, thanks to my dear friend, Brooke Monahan. I've been calling it justice-focused marketing. I've been calling it conscious marketing. I've been calling it equity-centered marketing. I've called it a lot of different things, but I bring the language of power and privilege and social justice and collective liberation and all of that, to me, needed activism into the conversation about marketing so that we can understand how to make an impact, not just with our work, but also, not just financially with our work, but like collectively with our work, right? I don't think that marketing has to happen in some silo as if it's only about moving the needle forward financially. And actually, I think social media prompts us into understanding how to do activism and marketing simultaneously. And we'll talk a little bit about that today. Now it feels like a pretty significant moment to be having that conversation, though I guess like every freaking moment feels like a significant moment to be having that conversation. On top of that, I also teach trans and queer, DEIB, diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging, whatever you want to call it, all the words that are both meaningful and in some ways meaningless. Anyways, I do that training and that consulting both in public workshops and then privately, and I'll have a pathway for that if that's something that you're interested in. Further on, there will not be like a sales pitch though. It's just going to be like one slide and a link, you know? You're gonna get something juicy in this. I can guarantee you. It's not a pitch. I want to acknowledge that I'm on the land of the Cowlitz, Clackamas, Umatilla, Walla Walla, and many other tribes colonized as Portland, Oregon. And I think I'm complete about who I am. I'm really grateful that you're here. I'm a little nervous to be doing this because it is all new content, so you might be getting some of that nervous energy from me. Let's dive in and talk about effective content marketing. So first I want to say, marketing happens whenever you're telling people what you're doing, right? Marketing happens whenever you're showing up to talk about your work. It doesn't have to look one way. Social media is one pathway to marketing, but marketing could happen through networking, through podcasts, right? Your website is a piece of marketing. Your newsletter is a piece of marketing, but also like, remember flyers out in the world in coffee shops? That's still marketing, right? There's lots of different ways to show up and grow your work, it doesn't have to just happen on Instagram or social media. I am going to be focusing on social media today, but really, like, anytime I use the phrase Instagram or social media, that can be anything. Content marketing to me is really cool for a lot of different reasons, one of which being is that it can be used in multiple different spaces, right? It doesn't just belong on social media apps. To me, we have to tell and show people what we're doing in our work. That is the premise in some way of content marketing. We also have to tell people and show people more than once what we're doing and in different ways, right? More than once. We have to repeat ourselves. I know that seems weird because for me personally, sometimes I look at my marketing and I say, well, I just said that a month ago. I have to keep saying it, right? You have to repeat yourself. I'm going to say this multiple times. Haha. But you have to repeat yourself. It's part of strengthening your brand, right? So don't be afraid to use the same words over and over again. And I know that brand can be a really icky word. If anybody wants to unpack that with me, I've got lots of spaces where we can do that. I'm just going to name that really briefly here. I mean, marketing is icky too. How can we reorient towards these things that are really icky and also deeply rooted in systems of harm and oppression? And kind of pivot, right? And say, how can we use these things that might feel icky or uncomfortable in a way that actually serves me, my community, my work, and like collective change, right? Because I know a lot of us who got into our solopreneurship, entrepreneurship, didn't just do it so we could get to our desk at whatever time of day. We did it because we want to make an impact in a way that maybe we can't do in general corporate America, right? Or behind a desk in a cubicle or whatever it is. So all of this to say, we have to tell and show people what we're doing. We have to say it more than once and in different ways, and we have to reach people where they are. So at one point that might've been like networking conferences, right? Or networking events, or I don't know, flyers in grocery stores and coffee shops, right? And now people are hanging out on social media, like a lot. And so I'm not saying use that to your advantage in a gross way. I'm saying use that information in a mindful, strategic, and care-oriented way for yourself, your work, and like the people who are receiving your messaging, right? I believe that to me, effective content marketing is about being of service and impactful and not just sales pitching. So, we know, like I know in my body when someone's just trying to sell me something or when someone's trying to be of service and make an impact with their work. And when I feel like someone's trying to sell me something, I usually turn off because it feels disingenuous. It feels manipulative. It feels gross, right? It doesn't feel connecting to me. The connection that I feel from seeing people's work in the world, and particularly on social media, is when they're offering me something like meaningful, right? When they're being of service, when they're trying to create an impact in a conversation through something that they can contribute via their work, right? To me, this is effective content marketing. I'm not talking about getting on dancing reels and pointing at text necessarily. I think that is one way in to getting people's attention, but it's not the only way. And trying to find who's unmuted. Okay, we got it. Great. And if getting on reels and pointing at text doesn't feel good to you, you're not going to do it, right? Or you're going to do it and it's not going to feel good, which isn't genuine. So really, in this whole conversation, anytime I'm like, you should, just know that I'm like, first though, honor your no. If you're someone who says, no, I'm not getting on Instagram, I'm going to celebrate that. Let's support you in not getting on Instagram, right? Let's support you in finding a way to use content marketing in another pathway. I've got lots of thoughts about that. But to me, I mean, and I had a no around making reels for like years, even though I knew I was supposed to because that was going to get in front of more people. Oh God. Oh, stop. Oh, stop. Hold on. Oh, I can't fix it. I don't know how to fix it. We'll have to just go with the terrible balloons because I can't do it. I'll have to do it in a break. Okay. I'm sorry. Yeah. I will try to keep my hands to myself. what was I saying? Oh, if you don't want to make reels, don't make reels, right? So this is what I'm saying. To me personally, a lot of this is about understanding your own inclinations creatively and how you want to share your voice. And some ways are going to feel more right for you, and some ways are not going to feel right. And I want you to honor that. And to me, that's a big part of making marketing more accessible for us, because there's so many blocks around talking about ourselves and our work, particularly if we experience marginalization and oppression and some internalized narratives, right, about our identities and our deservingness to exist or take up space, or whether or not we have to prove something. God, I'm using my hands again. I'm afraid the balloons are going to come back. Anyways, we have to share our values and we have to be accountable to them. To me, this is a big part of marketing as well. Like, for better or worse, this is the moment we're in. I'm not saying you have to speak out about every issue, because that would be exhausting and like not human. What I am saying is you do need to make sure that your audience understands your values, and you need to make sure that you're staying accountable to them in some way. We could talk about what I mean by that, but to me, in a lot of different ways, but to me, one example is if you showed up in 2020 to talk about Black lives, like I hope you're considering what that means for this moment too, right? For Palestinian lives, and that the issues are connected. And so to me, if we are showing up on social media and doing things in our marketing and our presence that is performative or perhaps not embodied or fully integrated, or that we even really understand, right? If we're just doing it because we think we're supposed to, I want us to pause and understand where our values are, right? And like reflect on those and how to be accountable to them, both in our work and beyond. To me, this is a big part of what it means to be running a business right now. We can't separate our personal and professional lives. We just can't. The world is too dangerous. Okay, I'm going to pause there. That was a lot. And I'm going to move on to the next piece, and then I'll probably pause again and see if there are questions. But I want to make a case for social media before I go any further. And I've said this a bit, right? It's where the people are. So to me, we have to reach people where they are. Well, people are spending more and more time on social media, for better or worse, particularly Instagram. And I'm going to show you a statistic about that in a minute. I'm not saying you need to be active on Instagram. If you hate being active on Instagram, then I want to support you again in finding pathways to use other platforms or to not be active, right? Maybe you create a profile and it just lives there like a homepage. Because let me tell you, when people are Google searching names and businesses now, Instagram comes up high, very high in search results. And a lot of people are tapping onto the Instagram profile because that's like their first social media internet language, right? Before they tap on a website. So on some level, if you don't want to be active on Instagram, that's totally fine. But I would recommend you have a page there that is intentionally created. If you have questions about that, you let me know. And by the way, if you have questions come up during this, please feel free to drop them in the chat or raise your hand or your Zoom hand. I can't see all of I'm not going to follow all of the chat about the reactions and the Zoom shit, but I will keep my eye on questions and stuff. Okay, so I'm going to go back to it's where the people are. It also continues to grow, right? It's not like the audience on Instagram is getting smaller. People are spending more time and it's gaining more users. And there are several other reasons apart from all of that I think Instagram is a great place to be, and social media in general, but specifically Instagram, because we can share multiple types of content and reach different learning styles. So when people are like, oh, well, shouldn't I be on TikTok? I don't think we need to be on TikTok. I don't even think we should be on Facebook. Honestly, I personally don't invest any time or energy in any social media app other than Instagram. And I maintain boundaries around how much time and energy I dedicate to it. And I am constant inquiry about my relationship to it, because I know that it can very quickly manipulate my brain into thinking that it means everything, right, for my business. And it doesn't. And I do dedicate time there because it's where the people are. I can reach more people. I can say the same thing multiple times in different formats, which will also reach more people because people learn differently, right? And again, the nature of the platform calls us into integrating our activism with our marketing. And to me, that is a really potent resource in so many different ways, because it means our work can be so much bigger than just us. So that whole narrative that like Instagram marketing, social media marketing, it's all very narcissistic and self-involved, I don't think that's true. Or rather, I think we can approach it in a much more community-oriented way. And this is part of what I'm talking about. Are there any questions? Or I don't want to, I want to be sensitive to time, and I've got more to share, but I just want to pause and check in. Anything coming up for anybody that they want to name or ask before I go any further? Chat box, Zoom hand, actual hand, although I'm afraid to raise my actual hand because you know what might happen.
I have a quick question.
Please, was that Sophia?
Yes.
Yeah, Sophia, please. And then I see Lauren's hand. Yeah, go for it, Sophia.
What do you say about, like, how you said that it continues to grow? What do you think about, I think it was last year that there was sort of a general feeling that it was just becoming sort of a stale space.
Yeah.
And we seem to be moving out of that now. And I'm just curious to hear what you think about that.
I love this question, and it leads me to my next piece of information. I think, which, and let me just break this down really quickly and then respond directly to Sophia's question. So this is, I just Google searched like yesterday, top most visited websites in the world. And this was one of the things that came up, was this Wikipedia page, which showed that Instagram is number 4 of websites ranking in the world as of October 2023. Facebook being right above it, YouTube being right above that. And what is happening on Facebook is very different than what is happening on Instagram, right? And what is happening on YouTube is very different. And to me, what is happening on Facebook is that we're predominantly staying connected with people we already know. They're like friends from high school or God knows where. And maybe we're not even like in meaningful relationship with these people anymore, or like our cousins or uncles or whatever it is. On Instagram, we're actually reaching new people, right? And building brand new relationships. To me, that is why when I look at these 4 websites, my brain almost ignores the first 3, and I just go right to what's the top, like, most popular social media app. It's not Facebook. People aren't using Facebook in the same way, right? It's Instagram above freaking X or Twitter. Even TikTok is way down there. Back to Sophia's question, I do think we're going to see moments where in the business and marketing space and conversation, a lot of us are like, are we done though with Instagram? Like, can we do something else? Because it's not working, right? And the thing I want to say to that is I think we're going to go through lulls around that. And Brooke talks about this all the time in her work. And I'm so glad she's raising her hand, because I think a lot of us are going to look for the answer, right? And at one point it felt like Instagram was the answer. And in 2020 and 2021, a lot of online businesses saw great like potential from how much they were gaining and evolving on Instagram, right? And stuff has changed, right? We're in 2023 going on 2024. A lot of us are like collectively exhausted by Instagram because it reflects the nature of the world, right? And so it's even harder, I think, to be impactful in marketing when we're all collectively exhausted, when multiple genocides are occurring, right? It's really hard to even engage in our marketing. So all of this is going to influence, like, yeah, there's a lull happening in Instagram as a marketing space. Appropriate. It doesn't mean it's dying or a lost cause. No, I do think we need to keep highlighting over and over and over again the conversation about what we do off Instagram too. Right? Get a newsletter list. I'm sure you've heard this. If you've been in the marketing and business space, you own those contacts in a way that you don't own we don't own nothing, right? We don't own anything on Instagram. We could lose it at any time. All that information, that content, those contacts, etc. So make sure that we find other pathways to stay engaged with people. Also, we could talk about email marketing all day and how impactful that can be, right? In contrast to Instagram. That's a long answer, but Sophia, and then I'll pass it over to Brooke. I think Brooke's going to chime in too. Sophia, did that feel satiating?
Yeah. And I feel like at the time what I noticed was, oh, we don't want to deal with Instagram. We're all going to TikTok. I'm like, I could give a shit about TikTok.
Nope.
I hate TikTok. I have no desire to figure out something else. And I don't speak as a person who's very active on my feed. And just, I'm not active with my own content. I haven't been for a few years. Personal reasons, health reasons, but I do go on there enough every day that I remember seeing this huge sort of exodus almost of like, we're putting up the 3 squares or the landing page and we're going elsewhere, and nothing wrong with that. But I was just curious because I don't seem to be feeling that energetically the way I did probably last year, most of last year.
Yeah. I mean, again, I think I'm just going to reiterate this one thing and then I'll pass it off to Brooke, or reiterate it in a new way, maybe. I think we are going to continue to witness waves of like, let's all bounce, right? This isn't working. We can't count on it. But I don't think that looking to another app is going to give us the answer. And like Threads isn't it, you know what I mean? And neither is TikTok. Unless you're trying to do something else, like become an influencer or a famous young musician or, you know, an actor, or I don't know what. I'm not saying you can't make an impact on TikTok, but it's different.
Well, and what I heard also during that exodus was the algorithm, that, you know,
Stop.
I mean, people with like 500,000 followers saying only, you know, this many people. And I'm like, and that's why everybody's leaving. But then also there was just a sense of like, we're just tired of this. So thank you for speaking on it. I appreciate it.
Yeah. And the last thing, okay, now I'm going to say one more thing and then I'm going to hand it off to Brooke. The last thing I want to say is this. I'm so tired of us talking about the algorithm. I'm so tired of us worrying about what the algorithm is doing and whether the algorithm is this and that. I'm not saying people aren't being negatively impacted in disproportionate ways by the algorithms, right? They're designed by white cis men predominantly, et cetera, et cetera. I think we know whose voices they want to support and amplify and how that might influence the computer design of the algorithm. And can I refocus on maybe making impactful content that somehow reaches people even with the algorithm? It's not going to reach all of my followers. I already know that. That's not the point, right? Okay, I'm going to stop. I just want to stop. I really want us to stop complaining about the algorithm. It's like we're missing the point when we focus on the algorithm, to me. Okay, Brooke, please.
I don't want to get too much into this because I want you to keep going, Tristan, but I just want to say, Sophia, in response to your question, I think it's worth remembering that the reason why that conversation about Instagram is dead is even like in our minds is because of the amount of time people were talking about it on Instagram. And we were all there listening. So engaged, right? There's a reason why the conversation was happening there. And I think it's worth understanding that the places that we are spending time, social media is in part designed to shape your view of the world around you, and it narrows your focus. And so depending on who you're following where and what you're hearing them say, it starts to feel real. And the reality, it's like, I'm at a point with all of this where I'm like, okay, first of all, if Instagram were really dead, why are you feeling the need to tell me about it here on Instagram? Oh, because you know this is where I'm going to listen to you. So counterpoint one. But the other thing too is just like, it's wherever you're going to show up and engage. It doesn't really matter if it's Instagram or something else. I personally feel like Meta isn't going to rest anytime soon to figure out a way to make Instagram relevant. And I'm willing to rely on them to continue to do what they're going to do to try to make it relevant. And I'm going to keep using Instagram really only because that's where I have the most reach to people. And I'm kind of like, okay, I've only got like, you know, I don't know, maybe I have like 1,200 followers or whatever, which took me forever to get, by the way, which is why you're listening to Tristan talk about this and not me. But I'm kind of like, am I going to spend my energy thinking about like Instagram or TikTok or Medium, or do I want to get like really involved in some like subreddit, or do I want to just be like, there's 1,200 people who already said yes, they want to hear me. Do I want to just push one easy piece of content out in front of them and then move on with my life? And that is kind of what I think I would try to orient back toward, like not so much hmming and hawing on like what's the right place to be, like Tristan was saying, but just like, where do you want to engage? Make a decision and just like get some stuff out there in the easiest way possible to connect with your people and move on.
I wholeheartedly agree, and I really appreciate that visual of people bitching about Instagram on Instagram, but also just remembering what Tristan said earlier is that's where the people are at, and like that hasn't changed.
It's not
It doesn't
changing.
matter if there's an algorithm working for you or against you. It doesn't matter how many followers you have.
Nope.
It doesn't matter. People keep going back. It doesn't even matter if it's only stories or only feed or only reels. Like they just keep going. They keep making the content. They keep showing up there, and we keep consuming it. So there you go.
Yeah. So how can we, and if you haven't already seen The Social Dilemma, the documentary, highly recommend watching it because it helps portray some of the behind the scenes sneakiness of Instagram and social media. But I'm not saying like, okay, I'm immediately thinking as an equity inclusion facilitator, I bring in frameworks all the time to show us culture and power so that we can start to understand how this stuff is operating. These frameworks are not perfect. A lot of them are really flawed. Some of them are even flawed teaching about the very thing they're trying to teach on, right? Where they represent race in weird ways that are actually maybe kind of racist. I'm not saying I get rid of all the frameworks. What I'm saying is I have to use these frameworks really strategically and skillfully with critical awareness, right? So when I bring them in, I introduce them and I say, these are the flaws. This is why we need to be aware of these flaws. How can we orient and make use of this and acknowledge like what it is offering us, flaws and all, what can we learn from the flaws, et cetera, et cetera. How can we do that with Instagram, right? It's a mess. It hurts to be there sometimes. It hurts to be human, and it's reflecting that back to us, right? But the thing I want to say is, and I'm not saying it's the answer, right? Don't get me wrong. Because even, and I do this all the time and Brooke has to check me on it, I obsess about people with large audiences, like people with like 20,000 or higher, 50,000 or higher. Oh my God, I obsess about people with 100,000 or higher. I obsess as if somehow they've made it and I need to get to where they are. That's part of the Instagram game. That's it winning over me. Because I know in my wise mind that even if I reach 100,000 followers, that doesn't mean that I'm going to be okay financially. And this is what it is. It's like capitalism. And that's so real. I have to survive, right? To pay for freaking water and food, which is ridiculous. All of that is real, but it's not the answer. And can we use it skillfully with critical awareness, right? Which also means limiting our time on it, limiting how much time we spend on content, limiting the attention that we put into figuring out where to be and when to post and what to post. Oh my God, the amount of time I spent 2 hours the other morning thinking about content and then it all went out. I was like, that was nothing. That was a complete waste of my time. So I really want us to understand, right? The neural stuff, the somatic stuff, the nervous system stuff, so that we can keep thriving and not let the app win while we use it strategically. Okay. I want to be sensitive to our time, and give you like the stuff I really wanted to say. That was like all the intro stuff. Okay, so we're going to talk about creating with intention. To me, and you've probably already gotten this based on some of what I've already shared, but to me, this is an experimentation process. It's a trial and error process. You're not going to figure it out, right? On Monday, December, whatever. You're going to experiment over time and iterate and reiterate. This is about finding a way to effectively share your voice and reach people, right? That is a process. And to me, one of the things in that process that is really key is studying the landscape. And what I mean by that is what conversations are happening on Instagram, what kind of graphic design things are happening. And if that's not the way your brain works, totally fine. I've we've got things for you to still be a part of the conversation, even without using Canva, right? Like use your notes app and take a screenshot. How many people are doing that and still making an impact with their voice? But what I am saying is study the landscape, right? What are people doing as far as graphic design? Or how many people are just taking screenshots of from their notes app and sharing those? Like, how do those work, right? Do they perform well? Do they reach people, et cetera, et cetera? So this is about trial and error, right? And the finding your voice thing is I think that's a lifelong process. I'm like, I don't think it's like, well, I found my voice and now that's it, right? I think that's a muscle that we have to learn how to use. It's vague. It's hard to like pin down what it looks like, but I know it when I feel it. And to me, a big part of it has been about my values and finding ways to contribute to existing conversations that fire me up, right? Like anybody who's been following me for some time knows that anytime abortion becomes a collective conversation, I've got something to say about it, right? Because I don't want to be erased as a trans person in the conversation about abortion. I'm going to say that every time abortion comes up because it still needs to be said. That's a part of my voice. So find a way into your voice that is also about your values, contributing to existing conversations. I don't mean centering yourself in conversations that we should not be centering ourselves in, right? This is the part where I'm like, be conscious of your identities too and how you impact other people. Your marketing isn't just about you, right? It's also about the way you show up with others. So be sensitive to that. And one thing you might do to find your voice, and also that we're going to work on together in a little bit here, is, and this is again, like if this is a new thing for you, this is like phase 1, right? Like what it looks like right now might change in a month, but can you identify 3 to 6 themes, conversations, quote, pain points, we'll unpack that in a minute, or questions you address in your work on a regular basis? Like anytime I see the same question coming up every single week in my client sessions, I'm like, I think I need to talk about this in my newsletter or on social media because everybody's struggling with it right now, right? So when I say pain points, that's like dominant culture marketing lingo. And there's a lot of dominant culture marketing lingo that is gross and problematic and manipulative. But again, how can we use something that's gross, problematic, and manipulative and take something from it? So to me, when I look at pain points, what I'm talking about is, what are people struggling with? Like when I thought about this workshop, and Brooke helped me realize, well, people are struggling with, many people maybe know how to create content and have already got the muscle going of like, yeah, I can create a newsletter, I can create social media, but it's not going anywhere. It's not sticking, or it's not growing, or something isn't clicking. And that is a pain point, right? That this workshop is teaching to. But I don't say present pain points in like the gross manipulative kind of way. I hope you've probably seen that stuff out there. And so you probably already know what I'm talking about. A lot of marketing can be trauma provoking. What I'm talking about is, again, how can you be of service to your client base, your audience, your community? What is it that you do in your work on a regular basis that lights you up? How can you share that in your content? Now, I want to share a few examples. This is number 1. This is me contributing my voice to an existing conversation. This is me expressing my values. This is me addressing a question that comes up in my work all the time. And what we're looking at the top here are 3 different posts that are essentially exactly the same. The carousel slide text is some similar variation of the same thing. The caption, similar variation of the same thing, posted 3 times over the course of about a year and a half with different designs and slightly variations on the title. This is me iterating. It's also, I just want to be clear, do I get really lit up about talking about the word women and women with an X? Does that excite me? No. Do I want to keep talking about it? Sure. I know that people need to keep talking about it. It keeps pissing me off. So I'm going to keep talking about it, you know, and it keeps coming up in my workshop spaces. So I'm going to keep talking about it. This is me recognizing that there's a problem or a question or something that I can comment on from my lens in my work that I have a lane in, right? And offer something meaningful to people. I'm giving it away for free. Right? I don't think there's anything wrong with giving it away for free. I've always got more to give. You've always got more to give than what you could possibly put on a carousel slide. Don't worry about giving it away for free, right? People are going to want to hear it again from you in a different way, especially in space with you or whatever it is. This is a taste of what it's like to come into a workshop space with me. I'm offering people something of value. And I'm offering people a glimpse beyond just a marketing asset, beyond just a come take this workshop with me. Right? This thing is going to get people in the door, maybe more than just come take this workshop with me. But beyond getting people in the door, it's going to reach more people. And when this piece of content gets shared with more people, maybe it doesn't translate to signups, but it translates to more eyes on my work and people potentially invested in further spaces with me. Right? It will build over time the possibility of a relationship so that when someone says a year from now, shit, I need to work with someone about the word women with an X, who can I know who can help me with that? Tristan, right? I've been following them on social media. The thing I want to point out, though, is that these two posts down here are also from the carousel slides up here. So what I'm saying is I took one long form piece of content. In this case, it went into a carousel slide. And that one long form piece of content has produced at least 3 carousel slides, at least 2 quote cards. That's what I call those little just single standalone posts with a quote on it, right? So what I'm saying is I took one long form piece of content and I repurposed intentionally, strategically, and pulled sentences from that long form piece of content to put into captions, to put onto quote cards, to reuse over and over and over again. Nobody's saying, but Tristan, you said that last week, or Tristan, you said that 6 months ago, right? Because nobody's watching my marketing content more than I am. Probably nobody's watching your marketing content more than I am. I watch everybody's marketing content. But here, this is the next thing I want to show. So this one started not with a carousel slide, but with a reel. I came up with this idea for this reel that I posted like a week ago or something. 3 things to try if your engagement is down right now. By the way, it's not what you think it is. I'm talking about multiple genocides occurring and the fact that we shouldn't be worrying about engagement or the algorithm or whatever. I know that we need to grow our work still while the world is what it is. And again, like, how can we hold that? Like, yes, I need to pay my bills, but now isn't the time for me to keep talking about my work like I was 2 months ago, right? I have to hold both. So anyways, this is also me contributing to a conversation, because people are on Instagram like, oh, my engagement, the algorithm, we've already talked about it. So I put this reel together, super short, like a minute long, maybe less. Here's the caption right here. Also, the caption is exactly what was in the reel text. And guess what? In like another month, or who knows, maybe a year, right? At some point, I'm going to pull out this carousel slide, which I haven't posted yet. It's the same thing from the reel. I'm going to put it into a carousel slide. I'm going to post that at some point when it's appropriate for me to do so, right? That could be next week. It could be next month. It could be next year. I'm going to hold it in my back pocket. And that carousel slide, there's at least one quote card in there, right? At least one card in there could probably be massaged to be a standalone quote. So that's one piece of content used multiple different ways, still being effective and impactful. Check.
Do you create all of these at the same time typically, or is it kind of free form?
Free form.
Okay.
Free form. I often don't even know it's happening while it's happening. You know what I mean? Like, I'm like, oh, look, there's a carousel slide. And then like a month later, I'm like, oh, look at that. But what I am saying is, though I've been doing free form, what I think we can all do is get more intentional and not be free form with it, if this is a way in for you, right? So what I'm recommending is, this is the framework. I'm like getting excited and hot and sweaty. This is the framework that is lighting me up right now that I am going to be teaching over and over and over and over and over again as much as I can. Because while I don't think it is the capital A answer, I think it is a key component to making your content creation process more sustainable and more impactful. And I also know it might not be the way in for everybody. And I have stuff to say about that at the end. So start with a long form piece of content, right? At least that might be your way in if you want to try this framework. That could be an article, a newsletter, a blog post, something you shared on a Patreon, something you write for Substack, whatever it might be, right? Can you turn it into a carousel slide? That might mean you have to edit it down or rearrange some of it. That's totally fine, right? That carousel slide could probably be repackaged and adjusted and redesigned and maybe edited and added to, right? At least 2 times in the coming years, because a lot of what we do is still relevant at different times, right? It could be turned into at least 2 quote cards. It could be turned into at least 2 captions. Where else could you use it? A sales page, your stories, right? I don't know. Where else are you taking up space in your marketing? Where else could it possibly go? Think about it, right? This framework, if you start with one long form piece of content and then tease apart these other pieces of content, that could get you about a month of content. If you do this once a month for, like, let's say you come up with 6 articles, right? And you tease that apart, that's 6 months of content. Be strategic though, with like the design, the copy, again, back to trial and error and experimentation. I think we need, like, me figuring out, by the way, what title will pull people in is key. So the next time I post about the word women with an X, I'm going to be trying a completely different title, but the title matters. Think about, I mean, unfortunately, headlines in newspapers, that's strategic for a reason, right? It's clickbait. Unfortunately, you have to think about that too. Titles have to pull people in, and it can't be super long or super wordy. We don't have the brain space or capacity for that. You've got to be as concise as possible. You've got to make sure that it's visually like accessible, that people can actually read it. I can't tell you how many times people are posting like white text on like pastels, and I can't read it. So be mindful with the aesthetics, the accessibility, etc. But this can help you, right? Are there any questions about this? I'm going to ramble on for a minute. Think about questions, and then I'll pause and ask and actually ask. But this is what I'm going to say before I open it up for questions, and then we'll have some practice time. 1, it doesn't have to be so hard. The content creation, the marketing process, right? Showing up. I think it's easy to make it harder than it needs to be. It's easier to get in our own way. I feel this all the time. And it doesn't have to be so complicated, right? So how can you make it simpler for yourself? Always be asking, like, what feels easeful right now? Right now, it feels like writing is easeful. Right now, it feels like showing up on camera is easeful. Like, what feels easeful, right? Don't overcomplicate it, and just keep in mind over and over and over and over again that no one is studying your marketing more than you are. Again, and maybe me, but really, like, nobody is going to be like, Tristan, you said that a year ago. They're going to be like, thank you so much for reposting this, or they're not going to say anything at all. I didn't see it the first time. They're going to say it. They're going to see it again, and maybe they don't remember seeing it the first time. Whatever it is, right? Repetition is a good thing. I said this earlier, repetition will strengthen your brand. And again, I'm just going to say it once more. No one's studying your marketing more than you are. Okay. I want to give a space for some practice, but first I want to open it up and see if there are any questions. Is that clear? Does it make sense? Are you like, okay, I see some head nodding. Is anybody like, yeah, I want to try this? Or is anybody like, nope, this doesn't land for me. This isn't for me. And I want to hear from you. I want to hear feedback. I want to hear questions. Again, this is the first time I've said any of this to anybody in a public setting other than Brooke, really. So like, I want to know if there are questions, things to ask, things to name. Yeah. Brooke Monahan.
It's coming up for me, so it's probably coming up for someone else.
Cool.
So when I hear all of this, immediately what my brain starts doing is like, and also this might just be, I mean, it definitely is me overcomplicating it, but also, I'm like, but if I'm going to pick just one thing to talk about for a month, how do I pick what it is? Because if I'm just repeating myself, am I going to go on like some, so I'm wondering if you have thoughts on,
Yep.
Some of us probably have content that we have created that is really like foundational that we can just go back to. But for maybe people in the room who are like, okay, if I'm creating that first piece of content, maybe what should I start with? Do you recommend just like starting, or is there a entry point that you think people should start with?
That's a good question. Well, first, let me say that while this original piece of content on Women with an X is about women with an X, it's also about being in solidarity beyond language, right? And actually creating spaces that are inclusive and not just in word, but in action. And so while the post is about women with an X, it's also about what it means to create inclusive spaces. It's also about sharing power. It's also about, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's about so many other things. And so to me, if I'm looking ahead and I say, okay, in January, I'm teaching a workshop on creating safer spaces for trans people. How can I talk about that in multiple different ways? What content have I already created that speaks to all of that in multiple different ways? I'll probably repurpose the carousel slide completely, but I'll probably take several pieces from the carousel slide that speak to a different part of the conversation, or so it looks, right? Even though it's all the same conversation. Now, I don't know if that helps, Brooke, with your question, but what I'm going to say is, one, directly to your question, don't overcomplicate it. Pick something that lights you up. That's going to be the easiest way in to me, right? Or something that you're on fire about. That's going to be the way in. Does it have to be one-to-one with something that you're marketing or promoting? No. Because that's the other thing I want to say. Not everything has to have a call to action. Not everything has to have a link in bio. If you set your social media profile up effectively, putting out content just to share and contribute will still be positive in your marketing, right? So don't overcomplicate it. Pick something that lights you up and see how you can tie that in to something in your business that you know you actually need to promote or market, right? And yes, to Sophia's point, like this post that we're looking at right now on this screen could also intersect with all of my posts that I've written, the whole like library of content that I've written about the fact that you can't guarantee safety, right? And that there's no space that's inherently safe. So all of that content is like one piece of my content library that I can pull from and massage and repurpose over time. I hope that helps. Emmy, Ilya, and then we'll do some practice. Emmy first.
So many buttons. Thank you. Question, observation-ish. Okay, so you said like pick something that lights you up, something you want to talk about. Like the first thing that came to mind for me was like systems and templates and organization, because like my brain is really type A like that. Everything's color coded. I label everything as soon as I download it so I can find it. Like how that could be a useful tool for other small business owners and solopreneurs to like keep their shit organized, right? What about if people's brains don't work like that and that's like too overwhelming for their brain, or you know what I mean? Like, am I being exclusionary with that and just assuming that everybody would benefit from these hacks and tips? But that's the way my brain works. And I don't know how to speak to how anyone else's brain works.
I think you're overcomplicating, Emmy.
Okay, thanks.
And when you describe, I want to offer, when you describe this, let's just call it a piece of content that speaks to systems, right? And I hear color coded. So I hear like maybe there's some visual things in there. Maybe it's a video of you with the color coded system, but the text is something else, right? You're teaching about something else. It's bigger than a color-coded system. It's bigger than systems. Maybe it's boundaries in entrepreneurship. Maybe it's freedom in entrepreneurship. Maybe it's, I don't know what. but like the commentary, the contribution there isn't necessarily one-to-one, do this in your work, let me know how it goes, but more like there's something you're commenting on, right, through the lens of this system that you are working with that might reach everyone, or maybe more people than just the people who are appealing to the color-coded system. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it's like, what is the
bigger message?
Yeah, what is the bigger message? Yeah, awesome. Thanks.
Thanks, Emmy. Ilya.
Hey, so I'm trying to be clear with this question. So coming from the lane of a business that is highly like social justice infused, I feel like some of us who have a little bit larger of pages, we're expected to bring the next best thing. And so regurgitating or repurposing things that maybe people who are new to social justice or are just coming along these conscious points or whatever are, given a little taste of it, but we're expected to bring this whole robust theological, you know what I'm saying? I'm trying to find the best way to really repurpose my content, because I feel like so many people have taken my content and regurgitated it. So then when I share the simplest form of it, it's like, blah, we've heard it all before, not realizing it actually goes back to me in the first place, if that makes sense. So I'm trying to work through that. I don't even know if that's pertinent to what you were talking about, but
yeah, Ilya, it is. Thank you for sharing. This is a conversation that you and I are going to have over time, I think. And one of the things I want to say to you based on what you're bringing in this moment is, and this maybe goes for a lot of people in the space, regardless of their audience sizes, Ilya, you have generously given for a very, 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 very long time, consistently on your page. You don't owe anything. You know what I mean? That page is for you to use when you want to, how you want to. And all of that content that you have created over the course of how many years you've been doing it for, all of those blue squares that you have, to me, every single one of those blue squares, I want to reuse it. I want to redesign it. I want to turn it into a carousel slide and add like just 3 more sentences. You know what I'm saying? I want to put your name on every single one of them. Like I want to revive your marketing without expecting you to do any more labor. That's what I would recommend, and what I hope to do with you as you and I continue to work together. And to me, that might be a way in for you having some ease around this like demand and urgency for social justice information, particularly from people who are new, and this expectation that you're supposed to create something new, or that you're not tied to what you've already created. This will reinvigorate and strengthen your brand and give those people what they want and give you more ease. That is my goal for you, is like, we're just going to reuse everything you've already made. I don't want you to create any new content, like ever, unless it's for your course offerings. And then when you make those course offerings, we're going to reuse some of that stuff too. Right? Does that feel helpful, Ilya? I know I'm speaking to some of what you shared, and I'm not speaking directly to some of what you shared.
that absolutely does. That's also very affirming too, because I'm like, shit, I've been doing this for 10 plus years now. I ain't got no more creation left in me. I'm tired.
You're done.
I'm done.
You are done. Go build a gym and create community, right? Let us help you do that by just taking everything you've already shared and putting it out all over again in a different way. That's what I want to do with you. Okay. I'm going to give us about 10 minutes. So in the next 10 minutes, the goal is for you to find a way into this practice, right? This framework, this repurposing with purpose. I'm not saying in the next 10 minutes, you're going to figure it all out and you've got your whole content library created for a month. I want you to have like an idea of where to go, whether it's a theme, a title, maybe 6 themes. Maybe you start brainstorming an outline for the content. Like, is it a carousel slide? Is it a reel? What does it look like? Right? Hold on, my computer is doing some things. Great. So you might identify 6 themes. Maybe you just identify one, but see if you can come up with something, right? See if you can brainstorm some catchy titles. And see if you can brainstorm both what you might share in the long form content and then how you might like tease apart or what it could look like to share in small pieces, right? And when you think about this, again, it doesn't have to be one-to-one to something you're actively marketing. It could be contributing to an existing conversation that is loosely tied to your marketing because it's still about your work, right? Like you do not have to show up and pitch on social media and call to action and link in bio every time you share. In fact, I would argue that we really shouldn't, that we have to sometimes share, to offer, to contribute, to be of service, right? So use this as an opportunity to look at it through that lens too. Any questions before we take about 10 minutes? We'll come back together. Yeah, at about 8, I'm going to say 17 after that extra minute. I feel like I need that extra minute. So 17 after the hour, we'll come back together. let's slowly start to make our way back together. If you need more time, great. Do what you need, of course. Hello, Neandra Moon. Oh, they heard their name. Hi, Neandra. Hi, Neandra. Glad we got that on the recording. Okay. Any questions? I see one in the chat from Sarah. I'm going to speak to that really briefly. I want to hear how this is going. I want to hear what you all think. I want to hear if this is hopeful. I don't know if you have any questions, but Sarah asks, any thoughts on how often we should be posting? Yes. Consistently, but not too frequently. What I mean by that is consistency is really important on social media. Like a little ping, right? And I don't mean this in an irritating, like gross way, but like, don't forget about me. Don't forget about me. Remember I exist. Remember I do this, right? Remember I'm here. I think that's really important. And when we do it meaningfully and with like, you know, an impact and being of service. And I think that especially, yeah, you get to define what consistent looks like for you. This is what Brooke is saying in the chat. Listen to the wise Brooke Monahan. That's exactly, she's just got the one-liners, you know? You do. You get to define what consistency looks like to you. To me personally, that might be once a week. It might be twice a week. There are times where I have more capacity to show up more consistently. And when I do, I lean in with boundaries. And when I don't have the capacity, I lean out, right? And I either put something out maybe once a week that is like, again, like something simple for me to get done and out, or I'll take a week off. I think consistency is important, as is giving yourself the grace to be a human being and flexible. So yeah, I don't have like a, this is what we should all be doing. It depends on so many different factors. I think audience size is really pivotal in this too. Like if you have a really large audience, you can get away with posting every day because less people are, you know, like the algorithm, how many people are seeing it, right? Whereas if I was posting every day, I think a lot of people would be like, wow, Tristan posting. And there have been times where they're like, you are so active, you know? And bigger accounts can post like multiple times a day, right? And not like over inundate their audience. So again, audience size is a factor too, but really what does consistency look like for you? What is doable? What is accessible, right? How often can you show up on the app? Because I don't think we can just post and ghost, y'all. I think we have to be there to engage with comments. And hey, if you want to post and ghost, that's all you. Again, I'm not saying like you've got to do it this way. What I am saying is, what do you need to take care of yourself? How much can you show up on the app, right? And actually engage with people in the comments or in the DMs or whatever it might be. I see two related questions in the chat. One from Mickey. Hi, Mickey. Welcome. Do you schedule posts and plan out content for the month? There was a time where I did that. I needed to in order to be effective in my marketing. I would sit down like once a week on a Friday and plan for the coming week. Or I would sit down and plan roughly for a coming month. And now I'm like, I've got a loose plan. It's kind of in my head. It's kind of in a notes app. And I just kind of wing it a lot because I don't have the capacity to sit down and plan for months in advance. And sometimes winging it means stuff doesn't happen because I just don't have it in me, right? So that's another part of this too. I do use many apps to help with posting to Instagram. One of those being Canva, which I've already mentioned. And by the way, if you aren't familiar with Canva or need some help with Canva, I'm teaching a workshop series and we're meeting tomorrow, and I could send you the recording from the first session if you want that. So just let me know. I use Canva all the time. I also use an app called Planoly, P-L-A. I'm just going to type in the chat, Planoly, but I'm not using it to schedule and post for me. I don't do that anymore. Because I find that if I schedule and forget that I've scheduled it to post automatically, it can go out at a really inopportune time, and I'm not aware of it. And what I mean by that is like October 7th wasn't the day I wanted to be launching something new, for example. You know what I mean? So like I think posting with awareness is really important, being aware of what's happening in the collective like energy field, for lack of a better phrase, like knowing what's happening in the news and the current events, like is now a time for me to take up space and launch something or talk about my work? If not, maybe I should unschedule that thing I forgot I scheduled. You know what I mean? So I use Planoly simply to map out my content and remind me that I need to post about X, Y, and Z in 2 weeks, right? I use it as like placeholder content planning. And I see another question from Mickey. I think my question about intro posts got lost. How often do you do the hello, the new followers, this is me post? Great question, Mickey. Intro posts, I would say, again, I don't have like a this is how often. I do them when I haven't done one in a while. I do them when my audience grows significantly, particularly around certain moments. Like, for example, I got 100 new followers the first time I posted about Palestine. I want those new followers to understand that my account is not dedicated to posting about Palestine, right? So, and that like, this is actually my work. And so I did an intro post shortly after that audience boost, right? Sometimes I'll do an intro post when I'm marketing something. Like, for example, I teach a long form marketing course called Conscious Marketing once a year. And every time I teach that long form course, after I launch it, I will do another intro post to say like, this is why I teach this course and this is who I am. And this is what, you know, my background is, etc. And so to me, it's like audience growth. When I haven't done one in a while, maybe my page needs a selfie and that's a time, right? Or when I'm marketing something and it feels relevant to what I'm marketing. I hope that's helpful, Mickey. Any other questions about this framework for content creation? Or anything else we've discussed so far? I've probably got time for maybe 1 or 2 more questions. Craig, bravo. Let's, I see your hand.
Hi. I basically, up until now, I have only posted videos basically showing little clips of what I do. I'm a rhythm facilitator, and I'm not totally sure how to link that to how you're talking about repurposing, and I'm wondering if I should be posting in many different formats.
Yes. Thank you for asking, Craig. Yes. Anybody who's only been using one medium, one format to share, think about how you can diversify and share across multiple mediums. Not everyone is going to watch videos on Instagram. So you could be losing a huge amount of people just based on that. I can tell you myself, oh god damn fucking, excuse me, the Apple things are just stop, go away. I very, 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 very rarely watch videos, especially if I know it's from someone who's sharing their work with me, because the videos don't actually feel like they're serving me. What I would want to know from you, Craig, is like, what do people get out of this movement practice that you're offering? Right? Like, it's so much bigger than just like, come move in your body. It's like, are you providing healing experiences? Are you providing grounding experiences? Are you providing mindful experiences? Like, what are some of the things that people, this goes back to Emmy's question, like, what's the bigger picture that you offer in your work and how can you show that? So maybe the videos are like, this is the practical stuff you can see that we do in my work, but then there's other pieces of content that are contributing to a larger conversation about where your work fits in healing modalities or embodiment, right? Someone to look at, Craig, is Jonathan Mead. I'm like, I can pull names for people to look at. If you need an inspiration, you let me know. Jonathan Mead, it's just how it sounds. I think that's his username, their username. I think Jonathan uses they and he. Jonathan is a somatic embodiment person, but wasn't always. So if you scroll back, you can see an evolution in their work, right? But Jonathan is doing something interesting in that they're seeing like, this is what I teach, but these are the larger themes, right? And they're speaking to the larger themes, and that stuff is going bananas viral. So use that as inspiration, Craig, and definitely find ways to share the essence and the value of your work beyond just the how-to and beyond video.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Casey, I saw you raise your hand, and I think Casey will be the last one, and then I've got a couple more things to share before we wrap up.
Hi there. So something that came up for me as I was doing this practice is I could think of the headlines I wanted to say like relatively quickly, but then I was like, oh, maybe I shouldn't go with my gut on this. I need to tweak that. I don't want to be controversial. I don't want to offend anybody. I don't, all of those kinds of feelings were popping up, which is something I've been struggling in content a lot, because the people who I actually want to work with now are not the people in my older but still existing audience.
Mhm.
So yeah, just thoughts about
Yep.
fear of being controversial.
I will say from personal experience, the fear does not go away. I have been deeply conditioned as someone who is socialized as female, and like many other aspects of my identities, right? To be terrified to say anything, to speak up, to use my voice, to make a statement that could be controversial in any way. It scares me every single freaking time. I also have no choice now as a trans person, and so I acknowledge that too. Like I literally have no choice. My whole existence is now advocating for myself in some instances, right? Also lots of privilege in many other ways. So that's not entirely true. And the fear doesn't go away. What I can say is I've had to find trusted colleagues, friends, business buddies who can check me and say, actually, I understand why you're feeling sensitive or cautious about this thing. Maybe you need to keep working on it because the language is kind of weird, or you're saying something that actually feels off, or have you thought about how this might land, right? I need a team of people who can hold me accountable and check me and call me in. Trusted people, maybe if I'm sometimes paying them, sometimes we have a consent relationship around that, right? And sometimes I sit on something for a long time before I share it. But I think beneath all of this, I'm wondering right now if there's some sort of, for myself and for you, Casey, and maybe others in the room, is there some sort of question, like one question that gets to the core of what's coming up for me around the fear and the self-doubt? I bet Brooke can come up with the question. No pressure, Brooke. You don't have to do it right now. You can send in a follow-up email if you do. Great. Brooke's already in the chat box. But the thing I'm wondering, and this is like totally inspired by some of how Brooke has shown up as a friend for me in my work, is like, is the question maybe, where is the fear coming from? Or something, right? Like, can I pinpoint, actually, I'm afraid of what my father's going to say? Because that's usually what it is. And my father represents fill in the blank, right? So if I'm afraid of what my dad's going to say, you know, can I think about somebody else who I trust, whose opinion means something to me, who knows my values, right? What would Emmy Singer say? What would Brooke say when Brooke saw this post, right? So I know what Gary Katz, my dad, would say, and then I'm projecting that fear onto all these other things, but he doesn't hold or share my values. So where is the fear coming from? Who's influencing the fear? Is it culture? Is it systems? Is it institutions? Is it power? Is it trauma? What is it, right? Or is it me just being afraid of taking up space and saying my truth? Have I already checked in that this truth is something for me to share, right, with my trusted friends and accountability people, etc. I hope that helps, Casey. Obviously, I could keep rambling about that. And I want to hear what Brooke has to say too, and then I'll lead us into wrapping up.
I mean, I could go on about this forever, and I'm not going to, but what I will say is like a tool that can help a lot, and anybody who's in this room who's worked with me before is like, Brooke, stop saying this. You keep telling us to do this, and I'm so irritated with you. You keep telling me to do it. Do it, everybody. Is I would write down the names, actual names of like 3 people who you would want to work with. Because as you have this audience of people who are looking at your work who are not the people that you want to speak to, and you need to remind yourself of who you're actually doing this for now and who you're actually talking to. And it can be really helpful to be like, oh yeah, like this is going to offend my dad or my weird uncle. Which like, honestly, if I'm not offending my dad, I'm not doing my job, but like, this is going to offend my dad. And it's for this person on this, but like, I'm talking to these 3 people. Right? I'm talking to these 3 people. What do they need to hear from me? Then once you do that, it's a little bit easier, I think, to be clear on what it is that you actually want to say. And then you can consider, okay, are there some things that I should pull in to acknowledge other experiences in here and kind of like, you know, bring some more into it so that it's not just so straight, but at least then it's intentional and it's not just a reaction to fear because you know there are people watching you who don't get what you're doing, who ultimately need to just fall off and go and find another place to hang out.
Yep. We're not going to be for everybody. We don't have to be. Okay. Last pieces. And I know we're at time. And of course, now my slideshow stopped working. Ha 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 ha. Ha ha.
Is it not letting you? Oh,
Hold on. Great. I really, this will just take a minute, I promise. The last two pieces are this. Stay connected with me. I'm teaching this framework one-on-one and in group settings starting January 9th. There's a group program where we're going to be accountable to putting the framework into practice together on a monthly basis over the course of 6 months. So think 1 day long form training and then monthly co-working accountability sessions starting January 9th. That is the Conscious Content Co-Creation Club. Let me know if you have any questions about it. Other aspects of my work, of course, if you're like, I don't understand, what does trans inclusion mean? What do you mean safer spaces? I love doing that work. And we're all at different points in learning, and that's totally cool. So come join me in creating safer spaces starting in January if that's something that you want to learn more about, if you want to hold safer spaces, if you want to welcome trans people into your work genuinely, if you hold spaces for women, by the way, I would really advise that you come to this workshop because I wonder about who you're excluding. And then lastly, sustainable social media. I mean, I've got lots of other things on my website. I'll give you the link for that, but sustainable social media will also take this today a little bit further in a shorter format for sessions rather than a 6-month accountability process or program. Either way, stay connected with me. Email address, website, Instagram, newsletter, all of these things are here. And I would really like to keep working on this with you in some way, shape, or form, because this stuff lights me up. So if you want to come talk about your content with me at any time, I'm here for it. And if you want to come learn with me about anything related to marketing, content creation, trans inclusion, this is all where to find me. Thank you for being here. Thanks for receiving this like kind of new, unfamiliar stuff. My armpits are sweaty, so I'm going to change after this. And I hope you all do something good for yourselves and remind yourselves that you're a human being and maybe get off screens for a little bit. And thanks to Fruition and Brooke for hosting me. Yeah. Okay. Take good care, everybody. Thanks so much. Be well.
thank you, everyone.